How you doing, guys? Welcome back to another Medic Mind GAMSAT video. My name is Harry and today I'm going to be giving you 10 tips on Section 2 written communication to help you write the best possible essays. So tip number 1 is practice exams with broad topics. Now often sample papers will have broad topics anyway, and you will see, as we know, multiple quotes or comments. And so the first skill to try and hone in is, can you develop more than one of those quotes or comments? That shows real skill, that you're not just picking a particular quote you think suits you and looking after that, but you're actually trying to tie in the different ideas that are being put to you, because we know that in theory they should be based on a similar theme. That also kind of brings along your ability to articulate your English and how can you bring together ideas in a way that is creative, but it has a sort of a structure to it as well. And in that same way, I would also suggest that you focus less on timing at this point. And so this part of your preparation should be early on in your S2 preparation. We're not focusing too much on timing, but making sure our techniques are in the right place first. So tip number 2 is to outline your own strategy or method. So having a framework, as often is the case for section 1, 2, or 3, is really important for you to be able to tackle questions methodically and in a way that doesn't have you thinking in many different places. It has you thinking in a methodical way that helps you align your thoughts and helps you bring together the ideas that you want to into your essays here in section 2. So, for example, you might take the quotes that you see on the paper and decide which quotes do I think best represent what I want to talk about based on what information I've been given and what theme I think might be surrounding these. And then I want to quickly brainstorm. I want to take these ideas and figure out how I want to structure the essay. Now, hopefully at this point you will practice a lot at brainstorming, and so you're getting used to having all these ideas together and articulating it in a way that is very structured. Finally, then, I'm actually going to write the essay itself. And so again, just having that methodical approach that allows you, regardless of the ideas you come across, to have a way of going about the exam and making progress constantly without being flustered by time or feeling like you can't get a grasp of the general theme. Tip number 3 is creating an ideas bank. Now, much like section 1, where you would maybe create a question bank of difficult questions, and the same could be said for section 3, with section 2, we want to take our different essays and ideas that we've developed over our practice and really keep them in a place where we can come back to them. And the reason why is because section 2 really focuses on general themes. And that means that different essays we write for one sample exam could well be relevant in another. For example, I like the idea of health and technology. I have, in my preparation for GAMSAT, written many essays based on maybe health or the healthcare system, and what goes in hand with that has been the technology associated with it. And so really bringing things together and having multiple essays across the way that you can refer to give you a baseline to develop any essay on any theme that might come up for your exam. Tip number 4, I really like this one. Reading or listening to podcasts in your free time. Look, Netflix can wait, okay? There is plenty of time to watch lots of shows whenever you want, but I think reading in your free time, if you get half an hour before bed or whenever it may be, just a little bit every day, will really help develop your creative skills, and also, as we referred to for S1 tips, it's going to be helpful for speeding up your ability to read and making you quicker. So it's a really important skill to have really across the GAMSAT. Also, with section 2, when you're thinking about podcasts, for example, I think it's a really good way to passively learn. It's not that you have to think of your podcast when you're playing it as, oh, I got to prep for the GAMSAT, let me put a podcast in. But even you might be cooking your meals, you might be going on a walk, whatever it may be, and maybe half the time you could be listening to your music, but the other half you put on a podcast. And a podcast is just a great way to listen to any topics that you want to, but you're listening to different people articulate different thoughts. And that is really, really important to, again, develop this bank of ideas that you can bring to any general theme of a GAMSAT essay. Tip number 5, getting feedback. This is really, really important. You will find that a lot of the time when you're preparing for your GAMSAT, you might be doing that on your own at a desk and really just focusing on your own skills and then analysing your own skills. But actually having someone give you feedback, particularly in section 2, when a lot of ideas and thoughts that come to the table, some of them might be subjective, and so you really need to get someone else's point of view. It also opens up more avenues of thought, because if you get feedback, someone can first of all analyse what you did well, and you can make sure you repeat those processes, but also critically analyse and see where you could improve and things that maybe you left out and ideas that they would have brought in. And actually, for example, with Medic Mind, there are one-to-one GAMSAT tutors who can really help you with that and correct your essays to really help you analyse, much like you would do in section 1 and 3, analysing the answers you gave. In section 2, it's about analysing what you've done and how you would improve it going forward. So tip number 6, staying up to date with current affairs. I really like this one. So when it comes to articulation, as well as just having a broad range of themes that you can talk about, articulation is really important. And different resources, for example, if you've got a newspaper or you're watching the news, you'll see different people articulating particular stories, and so you'll be able to take those skills and bring them into your own writing. But then also there's something that I really liked to use, and that is the Oxford A Very Short Introduction series of books. I would really recommend these because what they are essentially small books, the majority of which are less than 200 pages, so they're quite short. They're small books, and they essentially give you an introduction to any topic you would like. Literacy theory, maybe it's philosophy, maybe it's psychology, whatever it is you want. And I actually found this really, really useful because I took a couple of these books on areas, philosophy being one, where I didn't really have a whole lot of experience with, but I wanted to get a bit of an outline without having to scan through various different resources. I just wanted to get a general overview, and those books are great. They don't go into too much depth, but they give you enough to really build on that. And I would definitely recommend picking up a couple of those books. They're not expensive, and they will really give you some great ideas to use in some of your GAMSAT essays. But as I say, other things like TED Talks and the news, etc. are great ways to keep up to date with current affairs and make sure that your essays that you could write can also be relevant to topics you might see today, because there's no reason why the GAMSAT wouldn't include themes associated with things going on in the world today. So tip number 7. Practicing typing. Now, this might seem like a peculiar one, but I say this and also including grammar. So first of all, I was someone who didn't type that quickly. So I actually used a website called 10 Fast Fingers and a couple of other typing websites to help me speed up my typing. And that was because I knew that I was going to have to type my essay when previously the GAMSAT had been written. So actually, if you're someone who doesn't type that quickly, really an important skill to consider is your ability to type and practicing that every so often, because it's so important for that section, which is very time sensitive. Also with typing, we want to think about autocorrect. So what I would recommend doing is, if you're going to practice doing an essay in a timed scenario, then maybe go onto Word and maybe change your settings so that you don't have autocorrect on. And the really important thing there is just so that you're aware of the spelling mistakes that you may be making. Sometimes if you let autocorrect just run its course, then your essay will seem great, but you just want to know where you're making those mistakes. It's as much for your typing as anything else. Although I do believe some amount of, for example, misspellings might be accounted for because you're typing in the GAMSAT, and I know they're aware of that, but still you should also be aware that there's a possibility you will make mistakes. And so the GAMSAT doesn't have autocorrect, so you shouldn't have autocorrect. You really want to mirror the exam scenario. So tip number 8, one other thing that I did is I found a lot of the time I was spending kind of on my own just prepping at the desk. And so another way to help this is to find a study group. So finding a study group, it might be online, for example. You might reach out to people on Facebook, which is what I did, and you find other people in a similar situation. And be it that you all join together on Zoom, or if you happen to live near each other, you could meet up together. And it might be that you take the same essay in a time scenario. So you take an hour and you do the section 2 written communication for a sample paper, and then you go through the responses that you had. And what this does is it just gives you another perspective, what someone else might have written, what you might have done differently, and you're sort of collaborating in that way. You're getting more and more ideas, and you're again building this bank of ideas that you can use for whatever essay titles or comments, quotes that come up in the GAMSAT. So other people's perspective is so important. That accounts for the tip in feedback, and also this here. It's just great to have other perspectives to really improve your skills. Tip number 9 is focusing on timing near the exam. So when you start to get close to the exam, that might be maybe a month out or so, start thinking about timing and focusing only on timing. I mean, hopefully you've been timing yourself before this point, but now we're really focused on this, and we're less focused on maybe broadening our vocabulary too much at this point. We're really just focusing on making sure that our timing's right and making sure that we have that strategy under pressure prepared. Refine the skills that you already have over really trying to take on too much more new information, because that also will tie in with the confidence that I talked about in S1 tips as well, where you really want to have a confidence for this exam. It'll really help you, particularly under pressure. And one of the ways to do that is to just make sure that you're comfortable with the skills you do have, and then you're going to do the best that you possibly can in this exam based on what you've prepared for. Tip number 10 is probably, again, one of the most important tips that I will refer to across any of these sections, and that is don't learn off your essays. I cannot stress this enough. This is something that ACER refers to, I believe, in their handbook often, that you shouldn't learn off essays here. If it is noticed that it is maybe a learned off essay, you can be penalised for that. But also, this is about trusting your ability. When it comes to this section, it's not testing your ability to rote learn. It's testing your ability to articulate language and really just to be creative. And so all the practice and developing these different ideas and themes and getting that feedback and working in groups will really build this foundation that you can simply find any theme and write an essay on it. And that's the idea. It's the natural flow of things, and your articulation and your creativity will come in that practice, and there'll be no need to learn things off. You're really confining yourself to certain themes, and that's a really risky thing to do in an exam of such importance. So those are the 10 tips for section 2, guys. I really hope that this helps. It's certainly a section that for me took a lot of time to spend time reading, writing, and trying to get a solid baseline to build any essay that came about in the exam. So spend time on it. It is worth your while, and it's also a lot of the prep you're doing for this will also be relevant for your section 1 reading and things like that. So the GAMSAT prep that you're doing, although it might be for a particular section, ties in with others as well. Best of luck with the study, guys, and I will see you again in the next video. Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to unlock the rest of this GAMSAT course, which includes over 1,000 GAMSAT questions, 20 hours of GAMSAT tutorials, and hundreds of essay plans, click the link in the description below.